Now, there are some special common names of substituents that we need to memorize. I just want to point out a couple of things to you as we kind of get into this. So when we use these descriptors and Iupac names, there's going to be this term iso. So iso is alphabetized normally, and hyphenated prefixes like sec and tert are typically disregarded when we alphabetize. The one other thing that we use is, sometimes there's like one example somewhere in there where they use this term neo. So neo is something that you use for alphabetizing too. So let's take a look at these and go through them and see if we can figure out what they are. So an isopropyl group. So isopropyl, it kind of always reminds me of like an isosceles triangle. So there's an isosceles triangle kind of at one end. And then this right here, this is just our parent. So we just have to imagine that it's a long enough carbon chain that this becomes a substituent. So let's practice, by the way, and let's also name this thing as a complex substituent. So in other words, if that's our first point of attachment, that's your carbon number 1, then we would have a longest carbon chain going either to the left or up here to the top. So 1, 2. So that would be an ethyl, and then off of number 1, you have a methyl. So this is also known as a 1-methyl ethyl, but we often just simply call it an isopropyl. Let's do the same thing for this next group. So but means, by the way, 4. So we have to put 4 carbons somewhere in the structure. And iso means that we have that isosceles triangle kind of shape down at the end. Now, again, here is our parent, right? So that was our parent. And if we want to name this thing using the Iupac nomenclature, again, we find our longest carbon chain. So this is our longest carbon chain here. We could have gone kind of taken a right-hand turn and come up here. We could have done that too. That would give us 3. And then we number this as our first point of attachment because it's the first thing connected to our parent. And then that's carbon number 2, and that's number 3. Now 3 is prop. And then we add il because it is a substituent. And then off of carbon number 2, we have a methyl. So 2-methylpropyl. So I'm showing you guys here 2 ways of naming this. This is the common name iso, and this is Iupac here. So we're just practicing the Iupac nomenclature on some of these guys. So same thing over here, folks. That's isobutyl, but we could also name this as a 2-methylpropyl. There's 2 other special butyl groups that we see here. Again, let's just make a point. Here is our parent, right? So this is a sec butyl, and finding the longest carbon chain here, coming down just like so. And again, that's our carbon number 1 right there. So that's 3 carbons long, so that's a propyl. And then off of carbon 1, we have a methyl. So this is a 1-methylpropyl. Okay. And then the last one is tert butyl. Sometimes we just call that a T-butyl also. So if this was your parent, longest carbon chain, just 2. And then we have off of carbon 1, 2 methyls. So this is also known as a 1, fix that, a 1,1 dimethyl ethyl. So again, we could name this thing either as a tert butyl or as a 1,1 dimethyl ethyl. And there's one other group that that kind of shows up and from time to time here, and it's a Neopintal. So a Neopintal looks like a tert butyl with an additional CH3 on it. So we're going to have our parent here, and then we're going to put in a CH2, and then we're going to put on like that tert butyl group here. So a carbon with 1, 2, 3 CH3s. That's a neopintal. If this shows up when you're studying the N of neopintal, because it's not hyphenated, that's going to be part of what we use for alphabetizing. And then if we wanted to do this Iupac, well, we circle this longest carbon chain. So that is a propyl. That's always carbon number 1, the first point of attachment to our parent. Remember, always number 1. And then 2 over here, that's a 2,2 dimethyl propyl. So kind of a mouthful, but not too bad though, right?